Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello. Welcome back to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Jessica Donovan here, and I'm thrilled to be talking to my friend, Laini Oldfield from the Whole Food Collective. Many of you will know her. We've worked together in a few different capacities. She's an active member of our Natural Super Kids Club. I know lots of our club members have purchased whole foods from Laini at the Whole Food Collective. They've recently gone through quite a big shift in their business. But today we are speaking about a topic that I know is going to be really popular, that is how to get your kids eating healthier without them even knowing. So maybe a little bit of a controversial kind of topic in some ways, but I love Laini's approach, and she just articulates this so well and gives us so many great examples. And really helps to take the pressure off, which I am all about as well, when it comes to, healthier eating for kids and families. I think you're going to really love what she has to say. So she gives lots of really practical examples on things like that you can swap out of the diet, that you can add into the diet, some habit changes, but it's really all about that sort of slow step-by-step progress, which, as many of you know, is what we're all about here at Natural Super Kids as well. I loved my chat with Laini. I'm sure you will as well. And here she is. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Today, I am speaking with the gorgeous Laini Oldfield from the Whole Food Collective. Welcome.
Thanks, Jess. I'm very excited to be here. I love your podcast, and I also love any opportunity to talk about this stuff. So thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We've been talking about getting you on the podcast for ages, so I'm glad that it's finally happening. So can you start by just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about how you came to be doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an everyday mum of 5 and started a food co-op in my garage. And I just wanted to access better quality food for my own family, really. And it's such a common story, but as these things often do go, it really just snowballed and it grew a life of its own. I still remember strapping my newborn baby to my chest at 2:00 in the morning and packing orders in that garage. But as it was no fun at the time, but as time went on, we grew into an online business that's Australia wide, and now we deliver to people all across the country. But what my little passion really is coaching parents on how to make whole food eating a reality for their family. Because having 5 kids myself, I have certainly had my fair share of fussy kids on various places in that fussy spectrum. And I've had to learn ways, like creative ways, to get those whole foods into them because it's just so important. And I remember early on, we were coaching families how to radically do a sweeping change of the way that their family eat. And still to this day, we have people coming to us and expressing their gratitude to us and saying how wonderful that was to change the trajectory of their family's health. But we had so many parents, and I say so many parents, who all said this one thing. They said, I am just overworked, I'm overwhelmed, and as wonderful as what you're teaching is, I just don't have the headspace for it. I don't have the mental capacity. My schedule doesn't allow it. My fussy kids won't allow it. And so we really had to reevaluate how we approach teaching people about embracing whole foods for their kids. And that's sort of the direction that we've gone now is quite different to how we used to do it.
Yeah, I love it. And I come across those same challenges with our community as well. We have those best intentions, as parents, we might be learning about nutrition and learning how important it is. And then we want to sort of redo everything that we're doing in the kitchen, and it often just doesn't work. So today we're really going to be focusing on how to get kids eating healthier without them even knowing. So I just, yeah.
My evil laugh in the background.
The sneaky ways. So tell us a bit more about this, about your particular approach to this, to getting kids eating healthier without them even knowing about it.
Yes. Okay. Well, I do have a bit of a theory for this. So have you got a second?
Yes, I'd love to hear your theory.
So generally, all parents want their kids to eat healthier so that they feel happy and well, right? But the idea of turning it all around and weaning them off their favorite additive-laden crackers or their white bread can be incredibly overwhelming. And that's because we parents know that it's going to cause a backlash with our little minions. those darling little angels can very quickly turn into little monsters when they want their favorite foods back. And that's because food addiction is very real. And as you know, Jess, there are scientists employed by those makers of those favorite additive-free crackers, additive-laden crackers, I should say, whose job it is to make them addictive. With no joke, that's their job. But I know that's a story for another day. But there are very real factors here at play as to why it's so hard for these kids to wean off the foods that they know and love. So the bottom line is this, that all of us overworked and overwhelmed parents try to do the best we can, and we make these sweeping changes for our kids. And before that first big day, we steal our resolve for this inevitable backlash from the kids. And let's be honest, as any parent who has done this can attest, myself included, maintaining that resolve in the face of big emotions and big complaints from the kids can be incredibly stressful to sustain for any significant period of time. So often what happens is that the kid's stubbornness wins out over the parent's resolve, and those healthy changes then get pushed back into that too hard basket, where it then over time periodically calls out to that overworked parent, who then feels that dreaded parent guilt about it. And we know that parent guilt, or mum guilt as it's so often called, is such a killer. It can fester away over such a long period of time until, in my opinion, it comes out in one of two ways. The first way is some sudden emotional rage, which typically is, after we've just slaved away making this nice, healthy dinner and we've put it on the table, the kids turn their nose up at it, and then all of a sudden we just lose it. And that's not really the kids' fault. And in many respects, it's not even our conscious fault. We've just allowed this guilt to fester away and eat away at us, and then we just explode. The second way that we so often see parent or mum guilt kind of come out of us is in a much more sad way, I think. And that is that quite often we will speak so critically to ourselves about our failures to get our kids across the line with their whole food changes, that we actually can get quite teary and just feel like very self-critical and like a failure. And I think that that's even more detrimental. Well, they're both detrimental, but they're horrible. So we don't want that parent guilt. Now, I know that there's lots of parent listeners out there who are probably smiling to themselves, or maybe having a little teary to themselves right now, because they can see themselves in that scenario. And I know that, I will be the first to admit, although that I'm not typically the self-critical type, I absolutely have had that sudden emotional rage come out from time to time when I've just allowed myself to get so low and allowed myself to get so overworked and overwhelmed. So there, I believe, is a fantastic solution to all of this. I think that we're doing it backwards. I think that for parents everywhere, we could actually be approaching this quite radically differently. So instead of going in guns blazing, announcing these big changes and expecting the family just to play along happily, to begin with, let's get them eating healthier without them even knowing, like you said.
Yeah, I really love this because there's kind of that that there's that information that says, that we shouldn't be hiding the healthy stuff, that kids have to be exposed to, different healthy foods, that they should know that they're eating them. But as you're saying, that's not easy. And we are so busy and overwhelmed, juggling all the things as mums. And when you just explain that sort of scenario of doing all of that work and then the kids refusing to eat what you put on the table, of course we're losing it, because all of that time and effort that we don't have spare has gone into that. So it's not a good situation for families. So yeah, I've always really liked the approach of, yes, making healthy eating obvious for kids, but also, and I think what you're going to explain more and give us some examples of is getting, that healthy food into them without them even knowing, because you can then break that cycle, can't you? And really break that guilt that we feel as mums as well.
Yes. And I totally, oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, you go.
I completely agree with you that there is this whole body of evidence that suggests that, yes, we should be educating our children. And you know what? I won't for a second ever go against that, because I'm a huge advocate in educating our children about the benefits of healthy food. Get them in the kitchen making the healthy food and don't hide it from them. But my massive caveat with this is that the first initial step for these overwhelmed parents is to make it easy for themselves. And then we start educating. Now, I'll give you an example of that in a second. But there is just so much that we parents can do on the sly, so to speak, that our kids won't notice. And we don't even need to bother telling them initially about what we're doing. And those small things, they can absolutely have a significant impact on our family's health. And so what we want to do is grab that low-hanging fruit first. We want to get that momentum behind us. And there's a funny thing about momentum. Once we get some, it can just keep us moving forward despite all the obstacles that will get in our way. It clears the path. It makes things feel lighter, more exciting, more achievable. And it's just such a powerful concept. We don't need perfection. We just need progress, because perfection will always fail. Progress is realistic. Progress might not sound sexy, but in my world, it really is.
Oh, it's one of my favorite sayings, progress over perfection when it comes to people on this sort of health journey. Also, in business, not aiming for perfection, but aiming for progress. And I love that. I was just thinking also that momentum is one of the best things for that ongoing motivation as well, right?
Exactly. I think that it's so easy for parents to get discouraged very quickly, because it's an emotional load trying to ward off the complaints of your children while you're trying your best to do all the things. That it's just, if we can just get those wins, if we can get that progress, then it's just so easy to then keep going, because also we can let our kids in on all the happy wins they've already had without them knowing. So what we want to do is identify those easy swap outs, identify the easy add-ins that the kids aren't going to notice, gives you that momentum. And so then when you're ready to tackle the things that they will notice, because we can't do everything without them noticing, you already feel great that you're being a positive change maker for your family, you're empowered, you're confident. That kind of momentum can counteract the buffetings of those unhappy children. So that momentum is your superpower. It's your big secret, just for now. So I'm all about enjoying those significant wins without causing mutiny in the home. And then with those wins under our belt, we venture into that conscious education around healthful foods with those darling children of ours.
Yeah, and I think it's less pressure. If we know we're getting some of the goodness in without them knowing about it, then there's less pressure to make those more obvious changes, which, changes the whole energy in which you approach things. If we're approaching they need to eat this because, they've had no other nutrients for the day, or, you've spent all of this time and energy, that translates to the kids feeling the pressure, right? So if you're feeling less stressed, then kids are feeling less pressure. And we know kids who are feeling stressed and pressured are not going to try new foods, that the research already shows us that. So I think you're onto a real winner with this approach.
I completely agree, Jess. I think a stressy vibe from a parent can really shut down the openness of a child
Yeah, and particularly fussy kids where it's been this kind of issue, this family issue for a long time, and they feel the pressure every time they sit down to have a meal. When those stress hormones are high in a child, that is going to decrease their appetite often. So it's that perpetuating cycle that really isn't helping. So let's get to some practical examples of how we can do this. Maybe some different examples of the swap ins and the swap outs that you can share with us.
Yes. Okay, let's go there. So the one I want to start with maybe just slightly controversial because the patriot in me took a little while to to offload this one from our family's diet. But the famous black sandwich spread that is so often in our Australian pantries. I won't spend too long talking about the drawbacks and why you might want to get rid of it from your pantry. But suffice to say that there are some quite dubious ingredients in there that are taking away from our health rather than adding to it. That's the bottom line. And so what we can do, and I attribute this learning from the fabulous Ashley Jubenville, the kitchen coach. She taught our family this, and since then I've taught so many other families with great success how to swap this out. So you can get red miso paste. Red miso paste is a fermented soybean, basically, and it sounds disgusting, I know, but it's actually delicious. Now, I wouldn't expect any child to just, swap out their favorite spread for this strange-looking other thing straight away. What you want to do is grab your jar that you've bought from the supermarket of the black spread, and just as they start using it, maybe once it's halfway down, just start topping it up with the red miso spread and mix it up. The color is very similar. You can add, some people get fancy and add other black things in there to sort of make the color the same rather than the dark red, but I tend not to bother with that, and that's fine. And then as they begin using more and more of that 50-50 mix spread, you just keep topping it up with the red miso paste. And then all of a sudden, one day, you've got 100% red miso paste that's going on their sandwich. Now, the benefit of red miso paste is, as you're aware, it is a living fermented food full of probiotic goodness that's going into their gut and helping their microbiome to thrive and flourish.
Yeah, so many benefits. I love that. And you could even start, the 50-50. If parents are feeling like, oh, my extremely fussy child's going to notice that, you can even start smaller, right? Like it doesn't matter the ratios. And I always recommend parents, particularly with the fussy, picky kids, it's making that progress, right? So just a little bit of the miso in a big jar of Vegemite is still a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go as small and slow as you feel is necessary. Another great one. So that was a swap out. And there's plenty more where that came from, but talking about maybe an add-in. This is a great one for a savory add-in, and then I'll give you a sweet add-in. If you're making, I wouldn't say any dinner, but many different types of savory dinners can handle this add-in. Like a couple of nights ago, I made a shepherd's pie and I added in these dulse flakes. Now, dulse flakes it's a seaweed essentially, and it's in a very small, I wouldn't call it a powder, it's like a flake. You can get a powder form as well, but it's just an incredibly nutrient-dense food. In fact, it's 10 to 20 times more bioavailable in its minerals and vitamins than land vegetables. It's kind of like, I heard Alex Stewart from Low Tox Life refer to it as taking a multi-mineral. Sometimes we take a multivitamin. It's like taking a multi-mineral. Just add a tablespoon or two, whatever you think you can disguise in that meal, to your dinner, and it's going to be that fantastic source of minerals, a good source of fiber, It's going to help alkalize the body. And that salty taste is not even salt. It's actually a combination of all these beautiful minerals, sodium, potassium, calcium, lots of different things that just make that salty taste. So you can sense how good it is, but it's not going to add in an unpleasant taste to the meal. So any salty, savory meal can handle these beautiful dulse flakes being added in.
Yes, that's such a good one, because so many kids, like looking at this from a naturopathic standpoint, so many kids are really lacking in the minerals. And so any way that we can get some extra minerals in is going to be great. And yeah, I agree. That one's a really easy one to hide. I love adding the dulse flakes to things like soups and casseroles, and even like spaghetti bolognese. It works quite well in.
Yes, great examples. Now, if you want to switch over to, say, a sweet food. Now, if anyone knows me well, you know that I love my smoothies. Our whole family loves our smoothies, and for good reason. We pack in a lot of unconventional goodness into our smoothies. And so in terms of a sweet smoothie, we love adding in lots of hidden vegetables into our smoothie. So one example is cauliflower. And I'll give you a little example, a little story of what happened just a few weeks ago with our youngest, Rosie. She's 5. Actually, she just turned 6 on the weekend. She was enjoying her favorite strawberry smoothie that I would make her I was making her that smoothie for a long time. And she didn't know what I was putting into it, but she just had this firm love and enjoyment and appreciation of this favorite strawberry smoothie. And so she would also periodically go and get the cauliflower at the market for me. She would pass it to me in the kitchen. She'd see me chopping it up and steaming it and pureeing it and freezing it in these little ice block trays. And so one day I decided just to, let her see what I was making, like how I would make her smoothie. And of course, I added in, amongst lots of other things, some cauliflower into that smoothie. And instead of turning her nose up and saying, "Gross, Mum, cauliflower," she actually said, "Yum, cauliflower." And I believe that that's because the science is very clear on how when our child is exposed to a particular food multiple times, their taste buds and their aversion of that food actually can change to not only accept that food, but really love that food. And because her brain had associated that smoothie as yummy, and now she knows what goes into that yummy smoothie, she can now appreciate cauliflower. And that is when I hit her up with the education around cauliflower. She's only 5, but I was able to tell her that it helps get all the gunk out of her body, and that it helps her body not be inflamed and, swollen, and all the beautiful benefits of the cauliflower, right?
Yeah, that's so good. And so, educating her at her level, not going into all of the details of the nutrients that are in there or anything. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. And so let me think. I might jump straight into the third one, which is a habit. So we've had a swap out and add in. Let's talk about a habit that can be quite easy to achieve without the backlash from the kids. So when we talk about habits, some of them, can be quite arduous. Some of them can be quite obvious to the kids. But this one I love because it's quite simple and straightforward. It's about getting diversity of food into our tummies. So often our kids can be quite fussy, and, their tastes might be quite bland and limited and restricted. What we want to do is very gently and slowly, if needed, expand that so that they can have an appreciation for a more diverse range of foods. And so what we now know through the extraordinary amount of study that's now being done about the gut, and I know Jess is so passionate about gut health, so she'll be all over this, and I'd love you to chime in with any more info that you might have. But it's actually the diversity of fibers and nutrients that matter just as much as the quantity of fibers and nutrients that we get into our body.
Yeah, definitely. And I always talk about this, that diet diversity leads to that microbiome diversity, which is so super important for our kids' gut health, but also their overall well-being too.
Yeah. And so I guess a couple of tips to get that diversity in. One simple way is that whenever you go shopping, just try a different vegetable or a different fruit or a different food of some sort, and just have a bit of fun with it. Don't put any pressure on the kids to eat it. Just Google how to cook it, put it on the table and see what happens.
Yes, yes. So important, isn't it, that we don't put that pressure on?
Yes. If you're a baker, if you like to make muffins or cakes or breads, whatever it might be, try making a flour blend of different types of flours. There are some beautiful and easily accessible types of flours out there that, you can even buy from the supermarket these days, that you can just make a little blend at home. You might even just like to keep, say, 50% of your typical, like, let's just assume that you might every day be using organic white spelt flour. Let's just assume. So you might want to keep 50% of that flour as the base of your blend, and then just throw in a bunch of other flours like buckwheat, red lentil flour, quinoa flour. The sky's the limit, kamut flour. And so all these different beautiful seeds and grains that have been ground up for this flour are then going into your children's gut and feeding it, making it flourish, making it nice and diverse. So you can use that flour blend for fluffy pancakes, for the sky's the whatever you use your flour for. But you can use that same concept of a blend for so many different things. We even offer like a hot chocolate blend that's got 11 different things in there. You've got your cacao and your carob and your mushroom powder, turmeric, all these beautiful things just slammed in there together in a balanced way. But it just gives you the ease. You can make a bulk batch at home and then just use it a little bit at a time, or you can order it with us, whichever. But it is a great way to ensure that you're just getting that nice hit of diversity at some point in that day.
Yeah, such great tips. And that's where your blends that people can purchase through you are so good, because you don't even have to think about it. The blends are made, you can put a scoop into a kid's smoothie or whatever the blend is for, and you're getting that diversity. Because in a practical sense, we're busy, we tend to go for the same fruits every week, the same veggies every week, that we know our kids will eat. And I always like to encourage people to get their kids involved, taking them shopping, or even, if you don't want to take your kids to the shops, you can even, maybe look online and let's choose a new fruit that we haven't had for a while or that we've never tried before, or a new vegetable without that pressure to eat, I think is a really important point as well.
Yes.
So many good ideas. Were you going to add something else?
I was just going to say, I remember when you met my nephew online in one of our Zoom consults when I came to you with my adrenal fatigue. And he was basically surviving off chocolate up and goes at that point. And I have managed to replicate that chocolate up and go with using the principles that we've just discussed. We can put in there some frozen sweet potato puree, which is a fabulous source of resistant starch, to go in there and feed those gut bugs again. Got the frozen cauliflower puree, got some kale in there, some of that boosted chocolate milk that we have at the Whole Food Collective. We've got some date paste in there that's loaded with fiber and minerals, and I can share this recipe with you in the notes section of the podcast there. But it gives you like 18 different beautiful whole foods in this one gorgeously delicious chocolate, similar to up and go drink, like a milkshake that your kids can enjoy. And so it can be fun, and it can be light and easy. That wasn't intended. It can feel light and enjoyable is my point. So let's just take the stress off. And we really can do this, us parents. We have all the abilities and the awareness now at our fingertips, and we can take away the stress, we can take away the guilt associated that so many parents unnecessarily carry around in this department. And we don't need any of that. We just want to get some easy wins. We want to get that momentum. Once we've got that momentum, we can then educate them. Once we educate them, we can then start bringing in some of those harder to tackle things. I remember one of those harder to tackle things was peanut butter for our kids.
So how have you navigated that?
Well, at the time when we swapped over our peanut butter, it was more than a decade ago. I was quite early on in the journey, and I kind of just said, you know what, guys, this is one of those non-negotiables. Like it or lump it. Here's the new one. Deal with it. Mm-hmm. And we honestly had a revolt on our hands for a good 6 months. It dragged on and on. It was a hard one for us. These days, what I would do is the miso trick again. I would have really just swapped, mixed up a ratio and gradually increased it over time. But, there are some things that are going to be harder than others, like breads or milk. That kind of stuff can be, you can't do everything on the sly.
Yeah, but the other thing is you don't have to, transform everything either. I always say it's what you're doing the majority of the time that counts. And if you're finding these creative ways to get the extra nutrition in, that's such a big win. I think this approach will feel like a real breath of fresh air for so many parents listening. So thank you so much for joining me and sharing. And you're working on a new program. Tell us a bit about that.
I am actually. I'm very excited about this one. And like you said, we have had a lot of interest. The topic is how to get your kids to eat healthier without them even knowing. Surprise, surprise. But it's all about identifying those three topics that we spoke about: the swap outs, the add-ins, and some easy new habits. We just want to identify those low-hanging fruits, the easy wins. Let's get that momentum together as a group of parents and in a group experience where we can be intimate and share our conversations and share our wins and our challenges, all those things together in an experience where it's enjoyable together, and we can just help each other be more confident, have a bit more courage and boldness as we go about trying to really achieve this level of greater health and happiness for our kids. Because I hesitated to say the word happiness, but in reality, the science tells us, and it's very clear, that we can't experience the same level of joy in our life when our bodies are encumbered by all the stuff that we put in them. And when we're not, nourishing that microbiome, it's difficult for our brain to register serotonin, for example. So I really do get quite passionate about helping not just the kids in the family, but the parent to feel energized, to feel more clear and happy. And that's what this is all about.
I love that. And yeah, I think that's a really good point that us parents can often do with, more of this good stuff in our diets as well. So what we do for our kids will generally, really benefit us as well. So we will pop the link to go and check out Laini's new program. I think it's just a wait list for now, right?
Yeah, we're still putting the finishing touches and tweaking it. So it's a wait list for now. So feel free to go on and jump on that wait list. And when it's ready, I will let you know.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast later, then the program may already be released, but we'll pop all the details in the show notes, and we'll definitely pop that recipe for that healthy option for Up and Go in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been so good to have a chat.
Thank you for having me.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.